There we go. We're going to continue on with our lessons on how to shoot your bow. We want to make sure you're getting off on a good start. So we'll start by reviewing what we've done and get into a little bit more advanced techniques. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be your host today on Archery Talk 101, and we're going to cover a lot of cool subjects today. First, I want to go through this is lesson number 9, and I want to kind of do a little recap on what we've done so far, just so that you can kind of keep up with where we're at and what's going on. So let's recap a couple of things you need to think about in here is one, we briefly talked about a little bit about mental conditioning, importance of concentrating on your shooting form. We went through one on with your eyes closed, so you can concentrate on shooting form. And then there's other things that you have to look at too, as we're going along, visual techniques and stuff like that. That's one of the things that we need to, um, be aware of and work on. The second item, what we want to cover is a little bit more physical fitness for archery. If you're struggling with a little physical problem, you're not strong. You're going to struggle a bit more. You want to make sure you build up your muscles, and of course, one of the ways doing that is go ahead and do a lot of shooting. But there's other things you do to help out. And then we're going to cover a little bit on advanced shot analysis. How are you going to analyze your shot? What do you need to do? How do you identify patterns? And how do you adjust, for those and refine your techniques? And then we'll go into a little bit incorporating a variety in your practice. You want to do different drills and things like that. You don't keep doing the same thing over and over and over. If you like shooting at balloons, how many times you want to shoot at a balloon? It's okay for a few times, but if you have to do it a lot, give it a little variety and stuff, and we'll kind of cover a little bit of variety and what you can do in practicing and make it fun as well. Then we're going to cover a little bit of we cover a little bit of the fine tuning your equipment. We did talk about how to adjust your rest, how to adjust your sight, how to set your peep in there, um, you know, draw weight, your draw length, setting all that up. The one thing we didn't do a lot of talking about is stabilizer configuration. That's another subject in itself. We may get a little bit on that, but that's something we can look at too as well. And then, you can do a little experimenting with your spine of your arrow. Now, make sure if you're shooting at a weight, your arrow is spined to be at least as good as that. So you don't want to take and shoot a 70-pound bow with an arrow that's spined to be only 40 or 50 pounds. You're going to have a chance of breaking them. So you want to make sure that's spined correctly. But if you're shooting 40, 50 pounds, maybe you want to try a spine that's rated for 40 to 50 pounds, one maybe up to 60, maybe one up to 70, and see what works better for you. Maybe a heavier one with a heavier tip might work better for you. So that's some of the things you can do to improve that. And we'll get in that a little bit more later here. And now then, one thing we want to do is make sure we set our goals. What do you want to do? We did talk about video in your shooting, and what do you want to look at? You just want to look at it because you want to see yourself shoot, or you want to actually use it for something else. And we'll cover that a little bit later in the show here. And then as your practice goes along, you may want to change some of your goals and practice strategies as you're going along. And then we're going to go through a little bit of a mental imagery, and we talked about it down in one of the previous ones. And your shot routine and what do you want to do? You want to develop your shot routine. We talked about that a couple of times, where you want to do the same thing every time. If you get ready to draw back and you want to tap your foot before you draw back, every time tap your foot. Just whatever you want to do. It's just whatever you feel comfortable doing. You draw back. Maybe you want to draw back and you take a deep breath in, let it out, and then you go through your shot presses. Whatever it takes, that's what you want to make sure you work on. So some things I want to make sure is we're going to cover some of this stuff a little bit more in detail here in a second, but we want to make sure those are kind of the basic stuff you're going to go, because remember we talked about um, 2 lessons ago in otherwise I think it was 7. We talked about shooting with your eyes closed. That's develop the feeling for what your bow should be doing when it goes off. And then we talked about shooting a little bit, with your eyes open and shooting at different distances. So let's go ahead. We're going to elaborate a little bit more on the mental conditioning. And on there, you want to make sure that your concentration, plays, it's going to play a crucial role in your archery performance. Because if you're thinking about something else, you're not thinking about aiming, you're not thinking about where your shot's going to go. If you're looking at your pins, then you're going to hit exactly where you're aiming every time. Now, it may not where you want to hit them, but it's where the pins are aiming because you're looking at the pins. Now, so you want to take the focus, your mental focus should be on where you want the arrow to go. We talked about it in one of the previous ones. This is important where you go in. I want to make sure we look at it because after all, your job in archery is to store energy and aim. That's all you need to do. Store energy, which is drawing the bow back, and aim. Everything else should be kind of a subconscious action that's going to make it go off. That way you'll be consistent. Now you can develop different strategies, to calm yourself down. Maybe, we talked about it one just here just a couple seconds ago. When you draw back, taking a deep breath in and letting it out. And then that could be your way of relaxing. Something else is in your mind, you need to get that out of your mind. So maybe that's a technique you use where you're going to do a deep breath and then come out, and then now you're set. Now then we take a deep breath in and then breathe out and then shoot. So you take a deep breath the first time. This is just a technique. Take a deep breath where you breathe all the way in as far as you can, in through your nose, out through your mouth, relax, and then you're going to do normal breathing, and then you start your shot process. That could be one thing you do. If you want to do something different, go right ahead. That's all up to you. And then as you're doing that, then as you exhale the first time, now you're going to start focusing on the first time is just to let yourself calm down, relax, let your heart rate drop down a little bit. Now then, when you take your next breath, you're going to be focusing on where you want the arrow to go. Not where the pins are. You're going to put the pins over it. So that's one thing you want to do is visualize where the arrow is going to go. If you're not visualizing where the arrow is going to go, it's going to go where you're thinking about. I like to use an example of, what you're thinking about is what you're going to think about. What if something pops in your mind or somebody puts something in your mind, you're going to think about it. Now, I always like to use the little phrase, now don't think about the American flag. And I said, don't think about the American flag. And once again, don't think about the American flag. Now, what are you thinking about? The American flag, because I put that in your mind. Just like if you say somebody, well, don't miss. So what'd you put in your mind? What's your mind remember? Miss. It forgets the don't. That's just extra stuff words up front that your mind doesn't really think of. Miss. So the better way to say it is hit the center of the X-ring. That's the only thing. Hit the center of the X-ring. And if you keep thinking about hitting the center of the X-ring, next thing you know, you're going to be hitting the center of the X-ring. You're not going to miss because you're not thinking about missing. I think I said this on one of the other ones. I was watching one of the cooking shows. I forget which one it was now. I think it was Nick's Lowest Chef or something like that. And the guy comes up to him and says, "Now don't cut yourself." As she's cutting some vegetable up, I forget what it was now. It might have been an onion or something, but it's cutting up something. He says, "Don't cut yourself." And it wasn't 2 minutes later, and she cut herself because what had put in her mind? Getting cut. So that's something you want to think about is if somebody says something, first thing you want to do is ignore it unless it's something positive. It's like somebody comes like you're gonna nail this next shot, then then that's something you want to look at. If they don't say something like that, it's say, well, don't blow this, you're almost there. And then what are you going to think about? You're blowing the next shot because you're almost there. So don't think about the last shot. Don't think about your next shot. Only think about the one you're in. Now, once you get this down, this is the tough part. Once you get the mental game down, then it's going to help a lot in the long run for everything that you got going on. Because that, after all, it's a good part of its mental aspect. We've talked to other archers and some of the interviews, and that was a big aspect is the mental game. That you can play mental games with yourself or against yourself, and other people may work against you and not knowing it. Just say, just by some offhand comment that isn't there. Um, it's not for them to say because that's not what you're doing. You're here to shoot X's every time. Get that 60X or whatever you're shooting. Now, here's another thing that we want to look at is we talked a little bit. I haven't talked too much about physical fitness for archery, but that's one of the things that you want to look at is if you're drawn back and you're struggling with it and you're not strong, then you're going to have more troubles holding steady uh, because the weight's a little bit too much for you. You want to make sure that when you set that weight up, that you set it up so that you can slowly draw that bow back. I like to tell new archers, like if you can't slowly draw that bow back as if a deer is actually watching you, it's too much weight for you. So that's something to think about. Now, one of the things that you can do is, helping out with cardio fitness, get in doing some more endurance stuff. Because if you're walking like on an outdoor 3D course, you're doing a lot of walking. You might be walking up hills, down hills, long distances, short distances, and you get up there and you don't have a lot of time to recover sometimes. The group moves up there, and if you're the first one to shoot, you basically walk up to the line, you get ready, you draw back and you shoot. And if you're struggling, you're really winded, then that's going to be a tough shot for it. Now, if you're going last, that gives you a little bit more time, but you're going to get your time to go first because normally, like if there's 4 people in a group, each person shoot, you got their rotation. So you got shooter 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, one's up first at this target, two's up first, next one, three is the next one. You just cycle through so you're not everybody shooting first or last. Because sometimes you can see how they're shooting and see, okay, they judged it wrong. Because sometimes it come out, it's like, oh man, I thought it was further. So now then you take those comments and you can kind of figure out, okay, they thought it was further, they undershot it, so maybe it's longer. But then you might be guessing it right. So there's a lot of things that you can do. Just find something else to do that is physical active that will get you a little bit of activity going. Just hiking, skating, going upstairs, that all helps. So let's get into the third kind of subject that we have talked about here, but not really too much. That's advanced shot analysis. Um, what are you going to, for usually, when you're going to collect your data, what you can do is you can take and get like a scorecard. You can video your shooting, which really helps a lot. Uh, and then you can take and mark down what you shot on each one. And you can also put, clock position. So I shot a 9 at 3 o'clock, or I shot a 9 at 6 o'clock or whatever. And now you know where it's going, and you got your 5 different targets. If you're shooting a 5 spot, we're going to assume you're shooting a 5 spot. So you're shooting your 5 spot, and then you're going to see what happens on each one of them. So maybe your last shot is always really good. Well, what's going on between the first 3 shots? So then you want to think about what's going on, watch your video and see what happened on the first one, the second one, third, and fourth one. Or the other way around, lots of times will happen. Your first one's really good, each shot gets worse, so your fifth shot is always the worst one. So what's going on? Now we talked about getting that neutral position. So maybe you're lined up for shot one in the upper left-hand corner. But by the time you're getting down to the lower right-hand corner, now you're forcing your arm, your body into a position that's not naturally there. So when you shoot, you're going to naturally pull off. So maybe that's what you need to look at is something like that. And that can all be determined by watching a good video of you shooting. Watch what that forehand does. The one holding the bow. Does it go straight to the target on the first one? By the time you get the last one, is it pulling off because you're pulling off a little bit? So that's something you can do when you're starting to analyze those shots is what went wrong with this one as opposed to the other ones. How big is your groups? Are you consistently getting the groups in 3 inches within the X ring? And then 2 inches, 1 inch, and then now you're consistently hitting the X ring. So you can analyze what's going on. Where did you come off? with being error. Also note if you're shooting outdoors, what was the temperature? Was it sunny? Was it cloudy? What was the wind? All that can make a difference. Indoors, not quite as much because you don't have outside elements, but take a look at note that on your sheet. It's like, how did you do? And then also, what time of day did you shoot? That's something else you can do when you're analyzing is what time of the day. Are you shooting in the morning and you do really good, but every time you shoot in the night and evening, you don't do as well? Maybe it's because something you're doing during the day is you're just, by the time you get there, you're worn out, because you've been up all day working or whatever you're doing. Or maybe it's the other way around. First thing in the morning, you don't shoot very well, but later in the day, you shoot really good. So maybe there's something you need to look at there. So use all that information. Just track it. The more information you have, the better you can at analyzing how you're doing. And that's just one of the things you want to do if you want to take it to the next level. You need to analyze your shot, each shot, as well as uh, each each round that you shoot, and then each practice session. So maybe you start off really good and then you get worse, or you start off not so good and then you get better. So you analyze all that. That's just something that you're going to have to look at, just to make it, a little bit better for you to figure out what's going on. Now, one of the things that really haven't talked about too much so far is of writing your practice. So that's something I wanted to cover in this one a little bit more. So there's a couple different things going on here. Now, if you're only shooting indoors at 20 yards, that's all you ever shoot, then if that's what you like to do, then go for it. Go ahead and shoot that same distance every time. Your bow sets up the same way. You don't have to worry about it. A lot of us will shoot, targets indoors. We'll shoot 3D outside, and we'll shoot different events outside. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. So one of the things to start, we shoot at different distances. You can practice shooting at various distances, from your target, ranging from really close distance to really long shots. Practice some of those at your 5 feet, your 10 feet, because at some of your 3D targets ranges, they will put a target at 5 feet. Just make sure that it kind of evens it out. If you don't know how to shoot that close target, you're going to miss it, because you don't shoot your close targets at 5 feet with your 20-yard pin. You're going to be way off. You're going to be shooting way low. You're going to miss it by a long ways low. And that's something you want to know. Where do you have to aim for that 5-foot target? Now, generally, you're not going to have, when you're hunting, that 5-yard shot. But if you do, all your pins are not going to fit on the kill zone, so it doesn't matter which one you pick. But if you're shooting at a target that has like a 1-inch target you're trying to hit, now that makes a big difference. And then here's something that you can practice, different target sizes. I know one of the things that haven't done it, but one of the techniques you can use is take a single spot, and you're going to shoot 5 arrows at, let's say, well, if you want to, we can do it multiple different ways. One, you're going to shoot at 20 yards, shoot at that target. As long as you hit that target, you're good. Now, cut the blue outside ring, so just have that ring. Shoot your shots at it. And then each time you shoot, cut your ring off, cut another ring off, smaller and smaller. And next thing you know, all you have is that X ring that you're shooting at. Now, the other thing you can do if you want to do it at different distances is you're going to shoot at 20 yards, 30 yards, whatever distance you want to go. Say you want to go out to 60 yards. So you're going to shoot out to 60 yards. As long as you hit the paper, you're good. Now you're going to start all over again. You're going to cut that outside off and shoot clear out to 60 yards. And if you ever miss, you go back. So now you're going to cut the next ring off. And then, or have them already cut off so that you have different size targets. Just change them if you want. So now you're going to go back and you're going to shoot smaller target going back to your 60 yards. And then you're going to make a smaller target. Each time cut off rings. So the next thing you know, you're shooting at the 5 spot in the middle. So then you're going to shoot back to 60 yards, and you can cut it down. So now you're shooting clear back that smaller target. And one of the things you can do is if you miss, you go back. You have to start over and keep going through there. So you've got just your five spot on there, or your single, just the single spot on there, and you shoot it at 20, 30, 40, 50, and you're missing at 60. Start back over at 20, 30, 40, 50, and then until you can get at 60. And if you keep going through that 20, 30, 40, 50, until you can finally get to 60 and not miss. So that's one of the things you can do, changing different things. Um, then you can always take different type of targets, not just shoot at a single spot or a five spot. They have animal targets you can shoot at. They have tic-tac-toe games. They've got dice, they got cards that you can shoot at. They have dart boards you can shoot at. They're designed for archery. So there's all kinds of different games that you can play, and then all the different animal targets you can shoot at. And then if you want to just take on your computer and print out a target and shoot at it. And if you want to draw on it and have circles, you can make circles on it. Just do whatever you want to do and create your own target, your own game, or whatever. It's just something to have something different to shoot at. One of the other things you can do is you can kind of simulate competition scenarios, where you're giving yourself a time limit. You've got so many seconds or minutes to get your shot off. You can do this with friends, family, or whatever. Make it like a real tournament, but it's just you and your buddies shooting, and you can do whatever you want for who shoots the best and whatnot. And just keep your scores and have your own little competition in your own backyard or wherever you want to go. And it kind of helps on the pressures when you actually get into a tournament. That really makes a difference. You're used to competing against somebody else that maybe who gets to um, give the crap and who has to take it. First place gives it and last place takes it. Or maybe the loser does the dishes or something. Whatever you want to do to make it more competitive and more fun. And then one of the things that, by having this variety, it kind of develops your skills so that you're not just doing one thing over and over and over. For me, that kind of gets boring. So I like to do different things and keep up with different things. And that's what's nice about 3Ds, because even if it's the same course over and over, it's still different every time you go. Lots of times the targets be set up slightly different or different order, or you're walking, with a different group or whatever. Um, that's one of the things that's helps. It helps develop your skills, and then by changing your routine up, it does help you keep from like plateauing, or you get to one spot and then you're just there. It's hard to get over that. If you change something up, then you're going to have a good chance of you know, going a little bit further. One of the things that sometimes you get practicing and over and over, and then you're not getting any better. And sometimes if you take a break, you know, not for years normally, but take a little break and come back, and you know what? Lots of times you got those bad habits out of there, and now it's exciting again. And remember, it's you got to keep practicing. Mentally stimulate mental stimulation. Helps prevent boredom. So that's what's nice when you change it up. So maybe I'm shooting a tic-tac-toe game, and I've got you know two different arrows fletched two different ways, and I'm competing against myself to see which one. It's like, okay, I need to take this one from that color fletching, and so now you take it away. So that, and you're fighting against yourself, because okay, if you can nail X's all the time, now how do you get a closer X than what you already have? If you're off by a little bit, can you get closer? And that helps keep it a little bit more fun if you're doing it by yourself. So that's just kind of some of the different advanced techniques that I want to talk about here, so that we can you know advance a little bit more. Now, here's here's something you want to fine tune your equipment. That's something we've talked about in a couple of these, and I want to kind of go over it a little bit, so that you can kind of understand what's going on with tuning your equipment. Now, the recurves and longbows isn't quite as complicated to tune because there's not as many moving parts. Basically, you got the bow and the string and your rest, and then your arrow. So the tuning of those is a little bit different. So, um, compounds, they're going to be just a little bit different. Now, you want to look at your equipment and know how it works and what's set up. That's why we're going through here, setting it up. And if you're not sure how to set it up, get with somebody and, learn what's going on. The more you know about your equipment, the better you're going to be. If you have a problem, you can notice it, whether it's your equipment or yourself. Um, Most of the times it's you with the problem. Once in a while there is equipment problems, but generally, um, once you get a bow set up, if you don't change anything until you need new string, really not much changes until your string starts stretching due to age. Um, so you really want to know how to adjust your bow setup, whether you're changing your draw weight, your draw length, your stabilizer configuration, all that can affect your consistency and your precision in shooting. That's a whole nother thing on, setting up your stabilizer, because there's a lot of things you have to look at on your stabilizer. You know, if you have a really long one, like a really long one like your a lot of your target archers use, they they need a counterweight to counteract the weight because it's so far heavy. So you got to have some in the back. Now, I don't shoot target like that. When I shoot target, I'm shooting my hunting setup, or not really my hunting bow. I have another bow that's set up basically the same. I could hunt with it, but I just have them set up that way. So um, you want to look at your draw lengths. At some points, you may need to change your draw length. I know I first started, I thought it was 32-inch draw length because I didn't know any better. I drew back this bow and it was a 32-inch bow, and the lady at the shop says, "How's that feel?" It's like, okay, I didn't know any better. So when I got my next bow after that, I needed a 32-inch draw length because that's what I thought I was. Well, when I went down to the NFA shooter school, they come into town, and first thing they did on Friday night, it was a 3 night, it was Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. And Friday night, they measured everybody's draw length and said, I'm 29 and a half, but I'm shooting a 32-inch bow. So now then I've got to get this bow set up to 29 and a half inches, or there's no reason to continue on because you can't do the back tension release at the bow's too long because you're so stretched out already that there's no place to go back from. And so I got it set up at 29 and a half. And then, shooting that, I got comfortable with that. I learned how that was going to go. And then I actually shoot 29 now. I actually shortened it up another half inch because that puts a little more bend in my arm. And with that little bit more bend in my arm, I can still be pushing straight out to my target. My arm's going to extend out. And I don't hit my big heavy parka when I have it on during wintertime. So at some point you may want to change it, if it feels a little bit different, if you're going along and something not quite feeling right, maybe you need to change it a little bit. So you need to know how to do that. You don't have to run to the archery shop every time you need a little bitty tweak. If you can figure it out yourself, and that's what learn your equipment. Now, you want to experiment with, your draw weight. We did a little bit about draw weight. Now, shooting heavier, shooting lighter, different weights. I know I was shooting all the time. I shot better at 70 pounds than I did at 60 because for some reason at that 70 pounds, it forced me to lock into my form a little bit tighter, a little more solid than the little bit lighter one. Because, when you get 80% let off, 65, 80% let off, you're not holding much weight. And that holding weight is what was helping me lock into my form. Now, when I'd shoot 300 rounds with it, you get a little bit tired, but it was kind of weird. I shoot the first half isn't as good as my second half. I don't know. It was just that's one of the things I noticed whenever I'd shoot a 300, my second half was better than my first half, and I was shooting them 70 pounds. So, you usually need to learn how to do that. And then the next thing we want to look at is, arrow tuning. You want to look at your spine, the weight of the arrow, the fletching configuration. All that affects the way the arrow flies. And I did have a guy one time that did a whole lot of analysis on arrow flight and how the fletchings interfere, create this vortex, and then your broadheads on the front, and yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff going on here, especially start getting broadheads on there. But right now we're mostly just going to talk about shooting targets and just a point on it. So don't have to worry about the wings on the broadhead, whether it be a mechanical or a fixed blade. They're all going to have some wings up front. They pretty much have to have something open up. So it does change a little bit, but you want to make sure your spined arrow, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the spine has to be at least enough to handle the weight of the bow. So like I was saying earlier, if you have a 70-pound bow, you need arrows that are spined to handle 70-pound bow. Now what you do is you're going to look at, you need to know how long your arrow is and what way to tip. And that's going to tell you what spine you need. And there's charts. Your arrow boxes, if you buy a box of pre-made arrows, there's going to be a chart on them that says, okay, I'm shooting 29 inches, 100 grain tip. And then you follow your chart. Okay, here's 29 inches and here's 100 grain tip. I need this number on this shaft. So you need to make sure it's there. And then what you can do is you can experiment with going heavier weight, a heavier spined arrow, and that lightweight, or you can go heavier spined arrow and a heavier weight, which actually weakens your spine down. And then, do you want to do 3 fletching? Do you want to do 4 fletching? Do you want to have feathers, 4-inch feathers, 5-inch feathers, 3-inch feathers? Do you want to shoot vanes? Now, there's so many different options, and just playing with them. Get yourself a fletching jig. Um, I prefer the Bitzenbergers. They are probably the top of the line fletcher. If you get one, they're not cheap. They're expensive, and then you can either get a straight clamp or helical clamp. You're going to have to make sure it fits on your shaft. So you may have to take it. I use helical most of the time, but I have to almost take most of it out. So it's just a little slight curve because your carbon shafts are so thin, so such a small diameter that you can't get much of a twist on them because the jigs just won't wrap around the arrow. And then you have problems with if you have a pronged rest that it hits as well. So that's something you want to play with. I would start with just what the chart says is what you need, and then you can kind of play with it. If you buy pre-made ones, you don't pretty much have much choice. It's fletched with whatever the manufacturer fletches it with, and that's where you can get your own and you can experiment because maybe for your setup, the 2-inch fletching works best for you indoors. Or maybe the 3-inch works best indoor and 2-inch works best outdoors. So you just kind of play with that. You can have different arrows for different setups. You can have different sights. You can swap sights out if you need to. So all that is just going to be something that you can look at. Now, we're gonna go a little bit on your rest and side alignment. You want to make sure you have proper arrow rest and side alignment, on your bow. So we talked about this earlier on how to set up your rest. So I set them up so that it's center shot, which means on the newer bows, they're center shot, which means the string travels in a straight direction down the shaft to the tip. So when you're shooting, it's going to be lined up. And then there's a couple ways to do it. I use a laser where you take your sight off, put it on, it goes back to your string, you point it out to the tip. There's also little gadgets you can put on it. You turn around and you line it up on the shaft one and put the other one. It's not as accurate as the laser one, but you can kind of eyeball them pretty close if you're just setting up initially, and you can make sure your string is centered in your limbs, and you should be able to look down with your arrow on there and it should go right to the tip. If it's not, then you might need to adjust a little bit, but that's just kind of quick setup. But you want to go through and make sure that rest is in there right. Now the sight, if you're using a peep, the sight should be the pin should be in the same line. So you take, look down at your string with your arrow on there, and you want the string to go right down the middle of the shaft, of the arrow, and then you want your pins to be hidden behind the string. That gives you that same alignment. That should get your left and right, you know, should be right on right there. It might be just a little tweak in there. As far as the elevation, that's kind of, that's kind of where um, you're just going to have to set them and adjust them. We did talk about that a little bit, but that's where you want to make sure you get all that down, and then shoot at different distances, because that's going to determine a couple of other things too. You want to shoot at different distances. Say like you're shooting at 20 yards, 30 yards, and by the time you get back to 60 yards, you're always shooting to the left or the right. Well, that's probably because you have a little bit of cant in your bow, which you got it turned slightly off. It's not perfectly level. Putting a level on there and make sure you got to make sure the level is actually level with your bow. Otherwise, it's going to make you be off. But here's one thing you can do to make sure that is lined up correctly. Go up to 20 yards and put your 20-yard pin right on that X ring and shoot. Now put your 30-yard pin on that X ring and shoot. And then your 40, 50, and 60. And if they don't go up in a straight line, it's probably because you have a slight tilt in your bow. You're canting it one way or the other. Now, right-handers are going to normally tilt a little bit forward, and left-handers a little bit forward as well. So the right-handers, as you go up, your arrows are going to go to the right. Left-handers are going to go to the left. So that's something you can do to check, make sure you're not getting a little bit of a lean in your bow. Now, if you have your pins can be adjusted in and out individually, now then you just need to adjust those. But most of your new sights, the pin alignment is the same distance. You can't change the horizontal position on each of your pins. And so to make sure your bow is level, you want to put a level on your bow, make sure it's level, and you can put one on your string, make sure everything is set up so that you're all level and plumb. You put your level on and make sure that is on, because if that's off a little bit, that can set it off. Now, the other thing that can be off is sometimes there's a third axis adjustment, but as you're tilting up and down, they can be off a little bit. So you want to adjust those if you have that on there. But that's a bit more advanced on those. That's shooting up and downhill. If you're not shooting up or downhill, then you won't be able to notice it anyway. But that's something you want to do. Make sure you get that aligned really well on there, and that's something that you can do that really helps you out a lot on there. Now, you want to regularly test your equipment, so that what the impact, changing. If you paper tune or walk back tune or broadhead tuning techniques, there's a lot of fine arrow tuning that you can do. You want to make sure everything is set up and just test it, periodically test it. If you're going along and you're shooting, maybe go through and shoot all your pins at the same spot and see what they're doing. Maybe something has changed and you didn't realize it. That's something you want to do. Back when we had aluminum arrows, I kind of got, after a while, I got in the habit, every time I'd pull the arrow out, I'd spin it and see if make sure it was still straight. I was at a 3D shoot one time indoors, and it seemed like I always throw one way out. Always throw it. We were shooting 2 shots at each target. So I'd shoot one and it'd be a good shot. I shoot another one, be a bad shot. So finally, that's like, well, I just spun it. Well, one of them was bent. A bent arrow is not going to fly straight. So I had to put that one aside and not use that one. And that's when I started spinning them every time I'd pull them out and spin them. Now, the carbons, you don't have to worry about that quite as much because they don't really bend like that. The aluminums do. Unless you have a carbon with aluminum on the outside, you bend aluminum, it's going to stay bent. But that's a little bit different. But now, if you're still having problems, that's when you want to go through, and consult with a professional, somebody that's been doing this a while. And that's one of the things you can do in Archery Talk 101 Facebook group. Go ahead and upload a video of you shooting, or upload the information about what your problem is, and we'll take a look at it. We may be able to solve your problem. A lot of us have probably already had this problem and solved it before. So go ahead and get a hold of some of them. And if you have a shop in your area that you like the guys, they know what they're doing, stop in there because you can't have somebody stand there and watching you and correcting you on the spot. Now we can do that when we're on a video, like on a Zoom call or something like this, where I can watch you shoot and then give you feedback and then do it again, and we can go through and work some of that. Not quite as good, but it's being there live. But you know what? We can record it and then come back and play it later and analyze it later, when you're on here. Otherwise, we're going through, recording on phones and cameras and whatnot. But, talk with a professional if you're having problems with this. As you're learning, you're going to have problems. And, best way to do it is have somebody else help you. Um, you know, One of the things you're going to have, when you do all this, you're going to have, you know, the best tuned equipment. It's going to be there. So now once you get it all done, now then you don't have to worry about anything except you shooting correctly. Now, one of the things that can affect it shooting outdoors is how much wind do you have? Shooting different kinds of winds. If you have a wind coming from the left, that's real light wind, what does it do? And what does it do if coming the other way? Now, if the wind's blowing and maybe you're torquing your bow when you're doing that, because you're trying to lean into the wind and now you're shooting off. So that's some of the things you want to do is work on shooting in different environments. And that's going to be probably your best way of figuring out how to shoot when you do get outside. Now, one of the things I want to do is we're gonna talk about setting some goals and tracking your progress. So you want to make sure you have goals that are achievable. But no, not really. you know, if you're just starting out and you're lucky to get a 6-inch group, your goal is to get 60 X's on a 60 round target. That's your goal. You want 60 X's. And don't say, well, I want to do, no, go for it. Make a goal, but then you're going to have steps in between. So you're going to look at and track at your progress. Okay, now I want to get 60 X's. Now, how do I do that? First off, I got to get my first X. So you're going to work on that. You got 1. Okay, now I need 2. I need 3 and 4. And if I want to shoot around a 5, and then so you're working on that. So you just kind of get there, slowly. So one of the things that you hear them talk about is SMART goals, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So what you want to do is, okay, set those parameters and get you a goal. You want to clearly define it, so that you know exactly what to do. It's like if you say, well, I want to get 60 X's. Okay, what's your time frame? I want to have 60 goals within 60 days. I want 60 goals. I want to get 60 X's within 60 days. So what do you have to do to get there? And then you can measure that and you can get it. If you can hit 1 X, you can hit 60. It's just a matter of being consistent. So the different types of goals that you can have a performance goal where you're talking about specific shooting techniques or skills, which you just kind of alluded to here. Or then you have outcome goals, which is I want to have this. Here's what I want to score at a tournament, or I want to qualify for higher competition. And then you can have your process goals where we concentrate on the steps or actions that when you're achieving your desired outcome. Maintain consistent shot execution, and keep up with your practice routines. And then we want to make sure we track our progress. Now, you want to regularly monitor and track your goals. That way you stay accountable and motivated. You keep that training journal we talked about earlier. Log your sessions. You're going to record them on paper or an app or whatever you want to do it in practice drills. And then you want to keep track of what it does. And then you can go back and look at it and see, okay, What was my group size? What was my score? How did I improve? You can see, okay, here's my group size. Starts off, you know, you really don't know what you're going on. You're learning everything. You got a 6-inch group, and now then 2 weeks later you're down to a 4-inch group, and then 3-inch too, and then so you can track your progress. But if you don't log it, you don't know where you're going. Now you may have to adjust those goals as you're going along. As your skills get better. As you start getting to where, okay, my goal is to just get you know, I don't, my goal is to get the X ring, but right now I'm consistently hit in the center ring, or maybe I'm out. So you just want to constantly adjust them and then look at what ways that you can get a little bit better at it and just keep going. One of the things you want to do is, staying motivated as you can see your progress. And then maybe your groups aren't really getting any smaller, but your score is going up. So you're not getting any smaller groups, but yet you're getting more more points because your groups are right there at that edge where some are in the next ring, some are out. You're right at that edge, and now you're getting more of them in than more of them out. And your groups don't seem to really getting smaller, but your score is going up. So you are improving. And then that way you can see, okay, we are improving, and it is getting better. It all depends on how much you practice too. If you practice once a week, you're not going to improve as quick as you do in 3 times a week or every day. So now, one of the things you look at is, you're going to have challenges. You know, you want to anticipate, some of the obstacles that you might face or setbacks you might have. Maybe you're going along and for some reason you didn't get much sleep, that week before or something, that night before you didn't get much sleep. So you're going to be more tired. You're not going to be as focused. And then, that might be a time when you go shoot. It's like, you know what? I'm just not feeling this right now. And sometimes the best thing is just quit doing it that day. Come back a different day. Because if you get in and you start practicing bad habits, you're practicing bad habits. You only want to practice good habits. So if something's going on that you're not there, um, then you're just going to have to, stop and figure it out. Now, as you make mistakes and you fail at different things, go back and think. It's like, what did I do that caused that? And then that you're going to actually improve quicker by making mistakes than you will if you never made a mistake. So some of the benefits of goal setting is, it provides you a direction where to go and what your practice is. You're going to have, a guide to your efforts that you want to do. You're going to work towards something, and you have, a good roadmap to where you want to go. Like I say, well, okay, go on a trip. Well, where to? Oh no, just start driving. Well, you'll know when you get there. Well, when you get there, where did you go? You don't know. It's like wherever you decide to stop. We're going to say, okay, I want you to drive from, because I'm in Nebraska to Florida. And I want you to take the most direct route, the quickest route. But on the way back, I want you to take the most scenic route. So now you know what you have to do, and now you have the parameters, and now you can go through and you can figure out where you want to go. So that's something you want to do. Just take a look at, where you're going, track your progress, and then, just kind of go through and figure out where you want to go. Now, if your whole goal is just to have fun flinging arrows in the backyard, fling arrows in the backyard. That's your goal, is to just shoot your bow. If you don't care how good your groups are, you just like shooting it because you like shooting it, then that's your goal. You don't have to have a goal of shooting 60 X's at a tournament. Um, there's a lot of people that's what their goal is. Others, you know what? I just want to hunt. If I can keep a 3-inch group, I'm good because I'm shooting 20 yards at an animal, at a deer, let's say. And if I can hold it within a 3-inch group at 20 yards, I'm good. I got a 6 inch kill zone. I'm inside the kill zone. So now I can be off a little bit. So uh, shooting X's may not be what you want to do, but you just got to set the goals for what are you trying to get out of archery. If you want to take it to the Olympics, that's a good goal. If you want to take it to the field and you want to hunt and you want to make sure you have enough skill that you don't wound any animals, you make good clean shots, then that's your goal. So you just set up the goal that you want. Think back and say, okay, I started shooting archery. Why? Why did I start shooting archery? Well, it's just fun. I like doing it. I like shooting a bow. Okay. What is your goals with archery? I like shooting my bow. It's fun. Your goal is to have fun shooting your bow. So then maybe you want to just take the game targets and shoot game targets. You don't worry about anything else. You shoot game targets, or you shoot balloons, or you shoot, you stick dandelions on your target, shoot dandelions. Whatever you want to shoot is like that's your goal. You want to have the goal that best fits for you, not what somebody else wants you to do, what you want to do. So one of the last things I want to talk about here is your mental imagery and pre-shot routine. Now, we've talked about the mental imagery before and in your pre-shot routine and your shot process and all that. So you want to make sure that you go through and figure out what your mental game is. So, like I was talking about the American flag, which you think about where you want to go. So what I like to do is I'm going to focus on the X ring, just to, in your 5 spots or in the 1 spots, the blue ones. You have a ring with an X in it, and there's a center of the ring, and there's actually a little spot in the center of the X. Not 20 yards, I can't see into that anyway, but I know where it's at. So I'm going to focus on putting that arrow right in the center of that X, not in the X ring, at the center of the X. That's where I want it. That's what I'm going to focus on my arrow the whole time through. Say we take that deep breath in and out, and now I'm going to focus on that arrow hitting that centering the whole time. I'm going to go through my shot process. I'm going to focus on that arrow the whole time. I'm going to put my pin over it, and I'm going to go through, and I'm going to aim it at that spot, as I'm pulling through, and it's going to go off. So that's a shot process. Yours may be different. I would expect it to be different slightly. Not major different, but that's what you want to go through. And the advantage of that is you're not thinking about anything else. And as you do this every time you do this, and if you've done it so many times, then you don't think about anything else. It's just like those of us that done martial arts. You do that technique over and over and over and over so many times that you don't think about doing it. You just do it. One of the things that when you start working on something like that, next thing something start to roll off the table. You don't reach for it. You reach where it's going to be. You go where it's going to be, because for so long we actually worked on some of that stuff, where you take a pad, and the idea is to punch the pad. When they let go of it, you're clubbed back, and then you got to punch that. So you can't punch where it's at. You got to go where it's going to be. So you develop some of those skills. If you do it enough times, the muscle memory takes over, and you don't think about it. You're going through that motion, and then you don't even think about the shot going off. You just start it, and then you've done it so many times that it just naturally goes back to it, and you don't even think about it. So that's the advantage of shooting that way. Now, we talked about a little bit on your pre-shot routine. Whether you're taking deep breath or whatever you're doing, you want to have that routine in a structured it's going to be a structured sequence. You're going to go through all the mental, mental and physical actions that you want to do before each shot. Do it the same every time. And no matter what you're doing, if you're out hunting, you want to do the same thing, because you don't want to alter it, because now then you're getting out of your subconscious mind and conscious mind thinking about what's going on, and you don't want to think about what's going on. You want to go through and look at it. You want to go through that. And some of it you can practice, without actually having your bow. You can grab your release, and like I've talked about many times, is I had a string that is fits around my hand. It's actually loop material that's on a big roll, and it goes around my thumb. It's my draw length, and now then I can practice my shot technique with that, with just that string that goes through the shot process, and that string should leave my hand straight off. If it's not, and then it's off a little bit. So here's some of the components of a pre-shot routine that give you an idea. So first you have your physical setup, whether you're knocking the arrow, gripping your bow, getting your stance, and then mental preparation. You're engaged in mental imagery, which we talked about. Visualize, coming to the shot, anticipating the shot, going through the whole shot process, and then your aim alignment. You're going to put your pin over your target. You're not going to look at your pin. You're going to look where you want the arrow to go and put your pin over it, and it's going to bounce around. Nobody's going to hold perfectly steady. So you want to make sure that you're putting the pin over the target and letting the pin do what it wants to do. Then your anchor, find the anchor point on your face wherever you're going to anchor, you need to do it consistently every time. And then, there's the release execution where you're going to initiate the release. You're going to start, your finger is on the trigger correctly. So you're not pulling the trigger. You're going to start going through and shot. And now then the last thing you want to remember is follow through. I've seen people shoot and hurt and stretch up and try and see the arrow go. Well, the arrow's going to go. You're not, you'll see, have plenty of time to see it. So you want to go through and follow through. Just go there and then hold for a second after you've already shot. That way, everything is gone. You're not anticipating going off. Um, just like sometimes when you see somebody shooting a gun and like on a revolver where you shoot your 6 shots and the seventh one you haven't really counting, and then when that one goes off that doesn't have a live round in it, you jerk. So you watch people doing that, and that is a sign that they're anticipating that shot going off, and you want to go through and have that not anticipating what's going off, because it should be a total surprise every time you shoot. So remember, you're going to customize that routine to what you feel like doing, and then you're going to practice your mental imagery, and then you go through your pre-shot routine and then your shot routine, and that is kind of what I want to talk about today. And that's kind of the next step in what we're doing here. By now, you should have a good understanding of what's going on, and go back and listen to some of these. If you're not sure, go back to some of the other ones. I think on some of you can actually download the audio off of um, audible.com. I think you can actually download those to your phone and listen to them multiple times. So there's a lot of things you can do, and if you're not sure what's going on, you're having problems, make sure you get a hold of one of us. We can get a hold of you, or you can get a hold of us through, several different ways. You have, the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group that you can get a hold of us. Go ahead and join that. And then you can also go out to my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. There you can watch the videos. And then your Audible part of it on the podcast part, I upload them to Spotify, and they also upload them to, I think, Apple Podcast and a couple other places. And they're also available on audible.com. There you can listen to them there. I have several of my friends that listen to them there rather than listen to them on Spotify. So there's, I listen to podcasts on there. I've got a couple I listen to, and it's kind of nice that they'll just start playing through them, and the next one comes out and they'll just start play the next one. So you don't have to go find them and start them or anything. So that's kind of nice on there, how that works. But yeah, that's kind of what we wanted to cover today. If you have, like I said, if you have any questions or anything, make sure you get a hold of us, upload a video of your shooting to the group. And if you're watching on YouTube, then you can go ahead and comment, and we can make arrangements to take a look at what you're shooting. And if you want a little bit more in-depth training, more than just a quick look at it, we can make arrangements, and we can actually enter into a coaching thing, or we can get in there coaching, you know, weekly or whatever you need. And, we can set up something that where I can coach you, online. And so it doesn't matter where you're at in the world, as long as you have internet and we can communicate. Um, and there's always Google Translate if you have trouble in the language, but we can always go through and figure out a way to help you out. Just make sure you get a hold of us. And it's been great talking with you, and I hope you learned a lot from what I've been talking about. And we'll see you on the next one. My name is Roy Canterbury. I've been host today on Archery Talk 101, and we'll see you on the next one.